In today's video, I'm sharing with you how to stress less so you can live more, yearly goals edition. Let's get right into it. Okay, friends, I am starting a new series on the channel and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be all about stressing less so that you can live more. And if you've been on the channel before, you know that I've said that phrase so many times. I think I came up with the phrase, but we're going with it. And it all sums down to the fact that I firmly believe that slow living and productivity go hand in hand. They are really interconnected in so many ways, and hopefully you'll be able to see that by the end of this series. But in this series, we are going to find ways for you to be more productive and more efficient so that you can stress less about your day-to-day and your responsibilities and open up more time and space so that you can live more and be more present and go forth on your slow living journey. So we are going to start with the large picture yearly goals sense here in today's video, but as we go on in the series, we're going to get smaller and smaller, more nitty-gritty detailed as time passes, and things will start to interconnect and make sense and click. But let's start with the very first step, which is the big picture. And you might be thinking that it's kind of late to be talking about yearly goals type of stuff, especially now that we're in the third month of the year. But I promise you, this is more so like a mindset thing, and you'll start taking action once you rewire your brain and kind of shift your mindset into the structure that we're going to be going through in this series. So it will still apply, it will still be extremely helpful even though we're in March, and yeah, let's just jump right into it. I will say right at the top that this video and all of the other videos in this series can be used for personal joys goals, self-improvement goals, and work, project, or getting your life together goals. And I will use examples for each of those categories throughout the entire series. But just as a reminder, you can utilize the info in this series for your personal goals if you are trying to prioritize more time for it. You can use it for your self-improvement goals if you are trying to further your slow living journey, and or you can use it for your getting your life together goals if you are trying to free up more time so that you can prioritize slow living more. Okay, with all that being said, let's jump into the yearly stuff, starting with making year-long goals. So if you did not see, I did a lot of videos at the start of this year, maybe even late last year, talking about what my goals were going to be for 2025. And if you haven't seen that video, go check it out afterwards, but I essentially go through a list of goals that I want to focus on for the entirety of 2025. So these goals are not very simple, really easy to check off my to-do list in a matter of weeks or months. These are goals that I really want to focus on for the entire year, and I understand and know and acknowledge right at the top of the year that I'm going to be spending my entire year focusing on these goals. Again, you can check out that video to see exactly what my goals are for the year, but we will get into some specific examples depending on the kind of goal that we're talking about. And we have vague goals and we have specific goals. So starting with vague goals, we have the example of spending more time on hobbies, which is a personal joy goal, starting to journal, which is a self-improvement goal, and developing a work-life balance routine, which is a more of getting your life together type of goal. Clearly, as you can see, these goals are harder to measure because they're more vague. There aren't actual specifics here. It's more so leaning on the spending more time or doing more of this or starting this. And so these are more subjective goals, but they are still measurable. If you watch any of my monthly reset videos, you may see examples of this where I talk about wanting to read more in general, but I don't say specifically how much I want to read. And so each month I will measure to see if I did some reading in the month or if I did a certain type of reading. For example, reading a novella as opposed to a full-length novel, or reading a Substack article or 5 Substack articles instead of reading an actual book. And I'm still measuring it and still considering certain things successes, because even though it's not very specific, I am still progressing in that goal, and I am measuring and I am deciphering whether or not I think it's a success. So again, these are a little bit harder to measure. You have to have a little bit more discipline and understanding of what you think is successful when it comes to these types of goals. But again, they are still very, very measurable. Now, when we're talking about specific goals, we have the examples of growing and harvesting tomatoes, which is a personal joy type of goal, reading 12 books, which can be a self-improvement goal, or creating a consistent 15-minute morning routine, which can be a getting your life together type of goal. Again, I'm trying to use examples for each category that we talked about at the top of the video. And clearly, as you can see, there's not the more I'm using this a lot in this video. There's not a lot of more talk going on when we're talking about specific goals. We're saying really specific things. So growing and harvesting tomatoes specifically, or reading 12 books specifically. So there's something really quantifiable there. There's something that you can actually hold on and grasp onto there. And so that makes it easier to measure. You know exactly what you need to do to complete this goal. And so it makes it easier to track your progress on that. It's very straightforward. There's really no leeway there. It's very, very clear and concise direction. And because of that, there's a little bit more pressure because there are parameters set up and there are deadlines kind of set up. So for example, with the growing and harvesting tomatoes, that can only be done with tomatoes and it can only be done during gardening season. So it's very, very structured. And so you have to get it done in that particular time. As opposed to when I was talking about the vague goals, when I said, spend more time on hobbies. Hobbies can be truly anything and can be done at any point of the year. So hopefully you're able to see the difference between vague goals and specific goals, the pros and cons to each of them, but the fact that you can still work on all types of goals. Okay, so now that we've gone through the fact that we need to identify our big picture year-long goals and the kinds of goals that we can explore, now we need to figure out how many goals we want to work on for the entire year. I highly suggest starting small and being diverse in the kind of goals that you want to work on. So small can really depend on who you're talking to. I would say small for me is 5 or so goals, 3 to 5 goals I would say is small. But it can be 1 goal for you. It can be 2 goals. It can be more than 5 goals. I would try to stay in the 5 or less range if we're talking about small. Just because I know a lot of us can be super ambitious, myself included, and we really don't want to jump into this and get overwhelmed and then get extremely discouraged if we can't complete everything. So really try to start small here. And again, try to be diverse in the kinds of goals. So we just talked about vague goals and specific goals. Try to vary between vague and specific. Maybe do 1 vague and 1 specific, 2 vague and 3 specific, whatever the combination may be. You don't have to be extremely structured and, lose your mind over, oh my gosh, I need to ensure that I do 1 specific and 1 vague. I'm definitely not forcing you to do that. But try to branch out, try to think about the things that you actually do want to work on, and then shift some of them, make some of them, reword some of them so that they can be vague or some of them be specific. So say, for example, you want to start gardening this year. That's a vague one. Another one can be, you want to read 1 book a month. That's a specific one. Another one can be, I want to create a morning routine. That's a vague one. Another one can be, I want to make whole foods, healthy meals for my lunch meal prep. That's a specific one. So again, jumping back and forth between specific and vague, try to mix things up. And the reason why I say that is because these will start to set different timelines for each of those goals so that you're not constantly working on every single one of these year-long goals at the same time all year round, if that makes sense. Again, using the example of growing and harvesting tomatoes, that's very specific to gardening season, and so you're only going to be working on that for a specific part of the year, whereas reading 1 book a month is something that you're going to be doing throughout the entire year at a very small pace, as opposed to the other example where I said you want to create a consistent 15-minute morning routine. That's something that you work on every single day out of the year. So I'm hoping that you can visualize the kind of timelines that are kind of situating themselves as you decipher the kinds of goals that you're going to be working on, the number of goals that you're going to be working on, and the structure of those goals depending on the type of goals that you go with. So with all that being said, I'm going to do a recap at the end of this so that things can be really structured in your head. Final thing I want to touch on is how to keep track of these goals. So you've identified your yearly goals, you have varied the kinds of goals that you want to work on, and now you can kind of visualize the timelines for these goals. How do you track them throughout the year? How do you ensure that you don't fall off of them throughout the year? That is where the rest of this series is going to go. We are starting right now here at yearly, but we're going to go to monthly, then we're going to go to weekly, we're going to go to daily, and then everything will start to make sense, and you'll start to notice that every single part of this series is interconnected. And once you start looking at goals and productivity and efficiency in this structure, you will start to be so efficient using not too much effort or time or energy, which is so exciting because, again, this helps you stress less, this helps you live more. And this is why a lot of people ask me, like, how are you able to do, content creation, work a 9 to 5, start a brand new business, and still live slowly? And it's because of this structure. It's this structure that helps me do things so efficiently that I'm able to get it done. So, like I said, we are going to break it down in the next part of this series on a monthly level, and we will take the same things that we're talking about in today's video and break it down bit by bit in that monthly part, and then we'll keep going from there. So this is where we're going to end off for now. I'm going to give you a tiny bit of homework before we do the next video in this series, and that is to look at your goals that you set for 2025, identify which ones are specific and which ones are vague, and then try to visualize and break down which ones have specific timelines, which ones have more vague timelines, and how you would kind of consider success for each of those goals. Also, feel free to share any of your goals in the comment section, and I can always help you break them down if you're having a little bit difficulty of like actually tangibly breaking them down from scratch. This is like one of my superpowers, I have to say, so I'm always happy to help, and of course that's what this whole series is about. But as promised, let me go through a quick recap of what we talked about in today's video. We talked about stressing less so that we can live more and why that's really important on our slow living journey, how you can use this series for personal joy goals, self-improvement goals, how to use this series for getting your life together. Then we talked about setting large year-long goals, kinds of goals, such as vague goals, specific goals. Then we talked about how many goals that we should be working on and how we are going to track these goals moving forward in this series as we talk about breaking it down from a monthly point of view, weekly point of view, daily point of view. All right, friends, I'm so excited to be starting this brand new series. I do feel like this series is going to be extremely helpful for the majority of the Slow Morning Diaries community because I get the number one comment, the number one message that I get is how to find time to live slowly, especially as a parent, especially as someone living in the city, especially as someone who works a 9 to 5. Just all of the things. And so hopefully I'm pretty sure that this series is going to help all of those people that fall under those categories, myself included. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If I was like swiveling around throughout this video, that's because I got a new chair and it's a swivel chair, and I'm also cross-legged, which is so much fun. I feel so comfy, and I can't wait to do more videos like this where I'm kind of just relaxed, holding a cup of coffee perhaps, and we're getting nice and cozy together. But once again, thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you in the next video.